What's going on, guys? Welcome to Collecting Keys. I'm Mike DeHaan here with my co-host Dan Austin and Dylan Cook.
Hey-o.
If you guys follow me on social media, or I guess if you watch the news.
I do not.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't. But you've probably heard about the fires up in Spokane, where Dan and I are based out of. And if you follow me on social media, you know that I lost my house on Saturday in that fire. And, you know, we still have a structure, but my house did catch fire as part of the incident. And the smoke damage has essentially destroyed all of our belongings. And so the show's going to be sounding a little bit different audio and video quality wise for like a little while. I kind of figure out my next steps. I'm currently in my parents' house in Montana. We're going to take some refuge here for a little bit, kind of while we just figure out what comes next for us. And the insurance companies help us figure out a housing situation in Spokane, and then we'll decide what everything else looks like. But so as of time we're recording this on Thursday, the 6th, the fire happened on the 1st. So that was about 5 days ago.
It's still burning.
Yeah. And so like by the time this episode comes out with what they're projecting for wind and heat and humidity and stuff, there's a decent chance that the fire gets significantly worse before this episode comes out. But as of this morning, I looked at it. It was just south of 900 homes have been lost. Several thousand people displaced from those homes. The total evacuation that took place was over 60,000 people. And so it's a very significant event. And I figured for this episode, we could kind of talk about, what I've gone through, not just like a woe is me sort of episode, but also just like some of the things that I've learned about like the process. There's a lot of like, I think mental strength and things that I think apply to a lot of people that we can talk about. And then like sort of what going through this incident was like, because, you know, as you could expect, I did not wake up on Saturday expecting this to happen. Nobody did. But yeah, so I figured we would kind of go through there. I guess first off, with how this fire started, as of right now, they are saying that it actually was an arson, and they've arrested somebody.
Allegedly.
Yeah, they've arrested somebody, and, who knows what that whole process looks like. But how the fire started is it was a good way out of town. It was an extremely windy Saturday. And between when the fire started and when it reached 3,000 acres, I think was like just under 3 hours. It was incredibly fast. And from like how that looked for us was, Saturday I woke up, went and played pickleball. Me and my wife and son, we went to brunch with some friends. We got like the notification of the fire while we were at brunch, went to their house. We were kind of like watching things unfold. And it was about 1:45. We saw things kind of like moving towards town a little bit. And so we decided to make our way home, which is about 25 minutes away. I called our neighbor to sort of see what they were seeing. If they had any concerns yet. And had talked to a fire marshal that was up in our neighborhood, and there wasn't anything that was too concerning. Basically, he said, like, kind of get ready to go. They're not too worried yet. About 20 minutes after that, we're right at the base of my hill. They had already declared a level 3 evacuation, which basically means go now for our neighborhood. And we were just trying to get up there to save our pets. My neighbor called us frantic, basically saying that the field behind our house was on fire, and he broke into our house to save our dog. Wasn't able to save our cat who died in the smoke, unfortunately. And he fled. And then at that point, we basically did a big U-turn, tried to get over to the far side of the hill to one of the other exits out of the neighborhood, and just made our way evacuating out of the area. And then for the next 24 hours, we had no idea what was going on, how big the damage was. We could basically see on the Watch Duty app that we have kind of the progression of the fire. And we knew that it had reached our street in our neighborhood, but we didn't know if some homes were up there. We'd seen videos that like down the street from us, homes were down to the foundation, 100% gone. And we'd seen like little glimpses of like our neighbor's house was still standing and different things.
Can I ask a dumb question during this? Mm-hmm. When these kind of fires happen out this, do firefighters even try to tame them when they're in this part of, like, when they're obviously going up in residential places, or is this like too big, like we got to wait for it to like settle down?
So firefighters were actively fighting as it was progressing. And basically what they do is they try to get ahead of the fire and save the homes that are next in line.
Yeah, they usually do like 747 size airplanes, actual 747s with like fire retardant in it. So there's like pink houses right now.
Yeah.
Because they dumped that on there.
Oh, okay. So they're air fighting. Okay.
Yeah, and then they have like the airplanes with water and helicopters with water, which seemingly when the fire's as big as they are, it feels like it's just like you're spitting at it, but it does do help. It does help.
And essentially what they're trying to do is create lines that it's harder for the fire to jump across.
Bulldoze lines, fire, water lines, all that stuff.
Got it.
Yeah. And the thing that was so challenging with this is the winds were significant and it was so dry that like every like ash that was going was like landing somewhere, was catching plants on fire, was catching houses on fire, people's fences, those kind of things. And so in this situation, basically it had jumped over the river to get into town. It had completely decimated these neighborhoods that are down the hill from us, blown up the hill over the course of less than 10 minutes, ripped through all these houses. And then it was burning all the houses on the edge of the hill. And then you asked before the show, Dylan, how like houses next to ours were untouched. Basically, as the ashes were blowing across, wherever was landing, stuff was lighting on fire. And our house is kind of weird with what happened. So our structure stayed standing, and we had a note that was left on our door from the firefighter that basically said that they saw the flames and the smoke in the house. They kicked in the door and they saved the house. But it's really odd. I posted on my Facebook, but there's basically one area right by the gas meter. I don't know if like the gas meter blew up or what, where that's how the fire got into the house. And I do believe there was some kind of explosion because the firefighter said that because the door was closed, it saved the house. It was in my wife's office. And my wife hasn't closed that door in like 5 years. So it wasn't like it was closed. Something closed it. Like I imagine it must have been some sort of blast. It was like the heat pushed it or what.
Air coming in or something.
Air coming in. Yeah, who knows?
From the fire.
Mm-hmm. So the fire damage is almost exclusively inside the house.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of the exterior stuff looks, by all intents and purposes, fine.
I think for people that aren't from the Western U.S., I think the hard thing to understand is how dry it is here. Like, granted, it's green, but like everything is a tinder box. So like one little ash, you flick a cigarette out, like that will light an entire forest fire because it's just, there's nothing to stop it. There's no like moist and there's no humidity in the air like you see in other parts of the country.
Yeah. So my house lit that way, like how it came from, or I was actually thinking about this, Danks. You pointed out that the ground wire was right there in that hole. So I was thinking as well, if that was in the ground and say like the mulch or something that my wife had in the garden right there was on fire, it's possible that basically turned into a superconductor for heat, right? Yeah. And like lit the wall on fire.
And just started heating inside your wall. I mean, so many things you don't know. Yeah.
And if that was the case, it would have exploded as we had our modem that was right behind that on the wall. Oh. Right. And so the battery in there would have gone. But like as you go through the neighborhood, it's crazy because on the street over, there's literally like houses that are 100% surrounded by perfectly good houses. That is a pile of ash. Gone. There's nothing.
Yeah.
Well, that's so odd to me. I'm picturing that in my head and I'm just like.
Yeah. But then you go to the end of the street and literally every house is gone. There's nothing left.
Yeah. Like where Corey, Corey, like his house is right on the other side of Mike's like street over there. It's gone. That whole area is gone. One
of our He's listeners and scale members, Corey, he lost his house down the street from me. But then the other way too, Dylan, if you go down the hill through these neighborhoods that are completely destroyed, there will be like one house that's still there for some reason. It doesn't make any sense. And then like as you're driving up and down the streets, there's like damage to like the side of the houses, or like the fence will have burned down, or like the shed, but like not necessarily the house. There's like one tree that's burned in front of the house, and like that's it. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
You don't think of fires being spotty, right? And like this is kind of what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, it is weird how that is,
No, but I think the reality, that is how they commonly go, and especially when they're spreading this way. But I mean, like the big lessons I learned from it, honestly, I would say like the biggest thing that I'm so grateful for is that we had a local community with our neighbors and stuff that were able to act and especially, save our dog and try to save our pets, because we all know people that don't know their neighbors. At my old house, I didn't know any of my neighbors, right? Like if something like this had happened there, I would have been screwed. And now even the fact that our house has been burned, like we are able to rely on neighbors to sort of like provide assistance. That sort of stuff comes together and different things.
Yeah, knowing your neighbors is so freaking important. I was in the exact same boat as Mike because I was not home when the fire came. I was at the lake, and my neighbors, fortunately, they own a doggy daycare as well, and so they were home. And I actually had a guy working at my house, like just doing yard work. And I was like, can you go in my house and get my dog and give it to my neighbors? And so they could evacuate the dog. Cause there's no way. I was just like, I couldn't get back to my house. So like knowing your neighbors is huge. Just from that standpoint, help saving your pets. You know what I mean? And then also just kind of figuring out what you need to do. Cause my wife has been like chatting throughout this whole thing with like, we have like a neighborhood, like, well, I live in a cul-de-sac, like chat group.
You're on Nextdoor.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, we're not that advanced, dude. Text message groups, but you can communicate, and what's going on as things evolve, because information is so hard to come by, like almost impossible, like real information.
And there's so many rumors and things that go around, and people just latch on to stuff, especially as things are unfolding. You know, everyone is certain that they have the answer, but no one really knows. And
in those like critical times, you realize how stupid people are that you maybe would have respected, because they're like taking information and like using that as like fact. And it's like, stop, like just don't talk and communicate. Because like Facebook, I don't know about you, Mike, but that was kind of the only way to get actual updated information. And you had to be reasonably smart to filter 90% of what wasn't fact.
Totally, dude. You had to like look at who was saying stuff and make a decision on if that person actually knows what they're talking about, purely based off their profile picture.
Has credibility.
Check out the profile really quick. Like, are they crazy? You know what I mean? But yeah, because like the government, like, I mean, in their defense, like the firefighters and stuff are busy fighting the fire. Like, you're not going to get live updates on like the fire line, but like people that are there can tell you where it's at. Like, yeah, just, you know, cross this road, just did this as they're evacuating, or things like that. And that information is really important. But again, as things go on, it gets kind of wild, the information that comes out.
Yeah. And with these things, you know, like I would say the best of people and the worst of people all came out once it was truly crisis mode. So like as we were going back up the hill, traffic was crazy. Obviously, everyone's trying to get off. And when I told my neighbor, he got our dog, he was still trying to get our cat. I told him to just leave her, so I didn't want him to be in danger. And so we basically diverted over to like the furthest route off of our hill to just like, I just wanted to create space. And so we were going down this back road in a long line of cars, and these fucking pricks, dude, in these like big ass trucks, you know, the person, this is the person that will like throw you under the bus as soon as it's in their best interest to, right? And they're like ripping down like the wrong lane, going so fast. And there's not flames right there. This is not an immediate crisis, right? And I'm like, chaos. If you dumbasses, if you get into a car accident and you create a barrier, or they were like blocking fire trucks that were trying to come up because they were so desperate to get ahead of the traffic, which is perfectly reasonable. It took us 40 minutes to get off the prairie. There was no reason for them to be doing that.
That's not bad. That's not bad. Yeah. Some people it took like 3 hours, right?
I know. Some people were crazy that were way back. And so these people were like so out of control. But then like, I don't know, 10 cars behind us, this like Subaru Forester basically just pulled into the left lane. And so for context, this is a very narrow 2-lane road with like a cliff on one side, a cliff on the other. Like there's nowhere to go. But they basically pulled over in the left lane and just like parked there and essentially just like went with traffic like in their spot, so people couldn't do that anymore.
I love that. Yeah,
it was awesome. I have no idea who this person was.
Yeah, I've heard people doing that.
They're like unsung hero in it. Totally, dude. You know, and just like, you know, even as stuff started to unfold, just sort of seeing like the community come together has been really nice. But also on top of that, you also have people that are doing bad shit, that are trying to like take advantage of the situation. All of a sudden, all the rentals that were like private landlords are like 3 times market rent, right? Listed on Zillow, just doing like shady shit. It's like, come on, guys, what are you doing?
I wonder, we have any friends with Airbnbs? Wink, wink. I know, you know, that have been jacking up prices.
Probably, dude.
Yeah. We have a mutual friend that's been trying to get a hold of me. I'm like, bro, I am like dealing with an evacuation. Like, you should know that because you're from Spokane. I know you're not here right now, but leave me the hell alone and quit trying to ask me to pay your invoice.
Really? Oh my God.
You know who I'm talking about. like chill out, dude.
Yeah. Dude,
sorry.
Seriously.
Side note. Yeah, you're right though. People, there are people take advantage of the situation. That's in every crisis mode, right? That's why they also say, so like a totally separate but same conversation. Like that's where like a lot of kidnapping and like child sex trafficking happens, is when there's a crisis and there's an evacuation, like people go missing all the time. It's not as bad in the US because people try to have what methods of finding them, but in other countries and other areas, that's where it happens because there's mass chaos. You lose control. Your kids playing in the neighborhood and they're gone.
I know. And I heard stories about that.
You can put your tinfoil hat on and say, you know, the government's favorite thing is don't let a good crisis go to waste.
Yeah.
So how can they use this to, you know, do some other kind of regulation or law or something that is in the guise of civilian safety, but gives them more control.
I told my wife that we're going to create a gigantic, awesome fire task force that will not prevent the next fire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
But TSA all over again.
Yeah. I will say, because it is such a large scale incident, so far, like the working with different services and insurance and stuff has been relatively straightforward, especially because it's still active. So they were really quick to like give us money for like immediate needs.
Yeah.
I already have like, the insurance adjuster, my private adjuster or public adjuster all lined up. Mitigation companies are ready to go. Yeah.
Let's talk about that, because I would like to hear, and I think people just honestly from an insurance standpoint, this would be super beneficial, is like, I have a personal story from somebody that I'll share after you. But like with you, like what's the best, what's your advice and what have you experienced with like doing that? Because you honestly,
I want to preface this question too.
Go ahead.
Do you guys know if there is a one carrier is like the bulk of your geographic population, or do you think it's pretty spread out of who the carriers are?
I'd say it's pretty spread out. I think
I would say it's pretty spread out.
Okay. I go there because if it's 80% one carrier, that carrier is probably like flipping out and might not be able to pay everybody.
I have heard State Farm from a lot of people. That is a more common one here, but I don't know that would be like,
it's because it's cheap.
Yeah. I don't know if it's like 50% though.
Sure. Yeah. And you're not going to have that data, but go ahead.
No, I've been talking to a lot of my neighbors, and almost everyone I talk to has different stuff. So it is generally pretty spread. But yeah, to your point, if it was all the same, that would be a problem.
I want to add one thing too. Like this fire is I'm not saying it's unique, but it's interesting, honestly affected more middle class and affluent area. So there isn't a lot of low income or people, and it's not common for people to not have insurance here. Like where there's some states where people don't have insurance or whatever. It's pretty common to have insurance here. Very common to have fire hazard, but it burned, the way it burned through is it kind of burned right up through like middle class HOA development homes and then up into the more affluent areas, which is kind of interesting. So the insurance people might be more well insured too.
But yeah, so our full situation with it, so fire happened on Saturday, we went up on Sunday, boarded it up, assessed the damage. One thing I'll say too is where we lucked out is our garage was completely unaffected. So my wife's car was still fine, which was awesome. And then we had we've been, delaying on our chores like normal people do. And we had a dryer that was way overdue, that was full of clean laundry that was completely untouched. So we were able to take like a shit ton of clothes, which is really nice.
Didn't even smell like smoke.
No, it didn't smell like anything. So it was sweet.
So like fabric softener.
Yeah, pretty much. So we kind of had an idea of the damage. So that was on Sunday. Sunday afternoon, I called our insurance company, made a claim. They were obviously already aware of what was going on. And so got a claim number, all that sort of stuff. The intake person, they assigned me to a adjuster. And he said that you don't need to do anything. She'll call you in like the next couple of days. I'm proactive. I immediately texted her, left her voicemail, introduced myself. I said, here's my claim number. Here's my address. Looking forward to working with you. 7:30 on Monday morning, she calls me. And she's like, hey, I'm not even in the office yet. I saw your outreach. She's like, it's your lucky day. You're the first person I'm working on today. Right. And so I imagine other people went through that same process with Cincinnati Insurance. And I was probably the only one that reached out to her, I guess. Everyone else is kind of like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to wait to hear.
Which I think is important to think, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. Be on top of your shit.
Yeah. And then all day on Monday, I was getting our docs back very quickly, getting everything moving forward. We got reassigned to a calamity adjuster. And then I was proactive as well in sort of trying to figure out how the process works. And so I'm working with what's called a public adjuster, which if you guys aren't familiar to this process, which I wasn't entirely familiar with it until going through this myself, but you get an adjuster from the insurance company. They work for the insurance company. It's obviously a conflict of interest because this person's job is to give you the least amount of money because the insurance company doesn't want to give you money, right? So what you can do is you can hire what's called a public adjuster, which is the exact same licensed position, but they work independently and they basically represent you, right? And so how they get paid is basically a percentage of the money that they can recover for you. And so their incentive is to get you as much money as humanly possible, but they have the same training. They know all the tricks of working with the insurance company. And you can do the same thing as well in rentals and investment properties, right? It doesn't have to just be for like your primary home. And so we have a GoBundance guy I'm working with that I've known personally, super nice guy. He has a great reputation. He's worked with other guys. And I say that because there's also a lot of, it's like every other industry, there's a lot of really shitty public adjusters who will happily come in and take advantage of you. Right.
Yeah.
And so
the GoBro is a public adjuster, or he
is a public adjuster. Yeah.
He is.
Got it.
Yep.
And he has a company, like he has a team. It's like a real thing.
Got it.
The key is they get a percentage of what they get you, which means they're incentivized to do that, but means they could also take advantage of you.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where I think what Mike is saying is making sure that they have a good reputation, that they're a good person and all that.
Right. They can charge you whatever they want. Industry standard is typically about 10%, right? You can negotiate that down a little bit. If someone comes in and says they're going to take 25%, which is common for some of these criminal enterprises to do, don't listen to them. 10% is pretty normal. So I like the difference in what they can get you, though, is like on small claims, say you have like a kitchen fire, it can be 600 to 800% more than the insurance company initially offers you, right? Because my case is so large and my entire home is going to have to be remodeled down to the studs. He's anticipating probably 200 to 300% more. But, you know, if he can get me $400,000 instead of $200,000, I'll happily pay him his 40 grand because I come out $160,000 ahead.
Totally.
Right.
Yep.
And so basically he comes through that. And then how the process will work is when the insurance adjuster comes out to the house, he will also be there. If you're working with one of these companies, it could be a team member as well. I'm working with him personally. He will be there. And then basically they will independently each make a set, like an estimate to remodel the house, the insurance adjuster and the public adjuster will. And then basically they build their cases against each other. And so there's like little tricks and stuff that you can do. And so one of the things that David, who I'm working with, told me is that if there is water damage to the house, that instantly gets elevated to a level 3 sort of like renovation, which means down to the studs because they deem that worse than smoke. And so he's like, what you can do is the next time you're up at the house, he's like, go and look up at like the higher parts of your ceiling, like where a lot of the smoke accumulated, because what happens when they spray the fire, it turns into vapor. It goes up and it accumulates at the ceiling and it creates water spots. And so sure enough, when I was up there again on Monday, got the entire house is all these water spots. And it's like, perfect. That'll all be like water damage. You'll be able to just like justify every single room that that's in to be redone. And so there's like little stuff like that they know. And then same with like your personal belongings and everything is they know how to structure your requests for replacement of your personal items based off of like your income, what kind of house you have. All those sorts of things. They can make an argument of like, you know, yes, they lost all of their clothing. If you look at this person's house and income, they probably weren't getting $8 shirts from Walmart, right? So they will get you like more per item.
Mike's wearing Viore, dog. Viore and Lulu's.
Because otherwise, when you're working with an insurance company, you say like, you know, oh, I lost a toaster. Let's say that you had like a fancy toaster, whatever, that had different settings. And then like all you say is toaster, they're going to get you the $4 one from Walmart, right? It's going to give you as little money as possible for every single.
Sure. Yeah.
And so basically going through that has been relatively quick.
Do you have any personal belongings in there? So like, for example, my wife's engagement ring is on our personal policy. Like, do you have like stuff like that or cash or anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, we had cash in there. I was able to recover that. My wife had a ton of money that she'd made at her art markets that are completely gone because that was in the room.
Oh no. Yeah.
All of her merchandise and stuff as well. Thousands and thousands of dollars of merchandise that she sells, these things all burned up.
So you didn't have that on your policy though? Because like Dylan was asking, is it part of your policy to have your wife's wedding ring or?
I don't know yet. I would assume so. But a lot of it will be like how much of it actually needs to be replaced versus can be, you know, repaired, whatever. Because what you do is basically we'll work with a mitigation company as well. And they will not only mitigate the house, but they will help mitigate all of like our furniture that can be salvaged. You know, and so like a lot of our wood furniture and stuff is fine. Everything that's upholstery is going to need to go, but things like plates and dishes and, you know, appliances and those sort of things, they can probably be cleaned, but they need to be done a certain way. So then you're not living in your house with toxins from all the smoke and everything.
Yeah.
Well, and like for context, you go into Mike's house, like there's not an inch in there that's not touched with something that's toxic.
It's crazy.
Like this, like between smoke and the burning of materials, and like it's bad.
And some of the stuff that like actually did come out okay is kind of interesting. So when Tyler and I were up there, Dan, we found like some more items, but it was stuff that you wouldn't necessarily think about. And so like, you know, stuff in the garage is obviously fine, but like we had like that closet, like we had a closet that was directly outside where the fire was. The stuff that's in the bottom area of that closet, totally fine. We had like backpacks and different things, like some backpacks. And that obviously didn't get touched because the smoke just went immediately to the highest point. And so this area that's like right outside the door that's real low just never got affected by anything, right? And then there's actually stuff like in our closet. And so in our master closet, we have like an entry to our crawl space. There's this really dark ring that was around it. And our assumption at first was that the foundation caught fire or something and it had basically smoke had been coming out. But I actually think what happened is smoke was getting pulled back through there. So there's basically these tiny cracks around it, you know, and you can't really even see into the naked eye. but it is still a crack that air can go through. And so I think the smoke was pulled through there back to like the vacuum where the flame was. And so all of our stuff that's in our master closet that's like above that is totally fine too. Because I don't think the smoke ever reached it, because it would basically just getting sucked back to the fire right away.
Clarifying thing too, I know this from the rental policies, there's usually replacement costs or actual costs. I'm assuming you had replacement costs, which at least in my neighborhood is usually higher than the properties are actually worth.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's about 25% higher than the property's actually worth.
Okay. Yeah.
So
yeah, there's a wrinkle in that I want to share after Mike's done.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's anything else more to add on like that regard. But like I said, I will say, because it's such a huge incident, stuff has been moving forward relatively quickly. Also too, I'd say if you're ever in this situation, call your insurance company right away, because they'll also give you money. I mean, they gave us $10,000 to cover immediate costs with no question. Literally, they just sent me a form. I signed it. I had the money the next day.
That's awesome.
That's just free money to just cover like super basic stuff, and there's no like obligation to pay it back. You don't have to keep receipts or do any of those sort of things. And I think right now, especially because it's such a large incident, being proactive is going to be so, so critical. And it's really hard to do when you're in a state of mourning, right? But you also just like need to move stuff along. Otherwise, you're going to get into the system, because ultimately what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks, like always happens with those sort of things, the rest of the city will move on, the news will move on, everyone will move on, and there's still going to be, 900 families that don't have a home, right? And so you got to take advantage of what's given to you while it's top of mind for people.
Right. Well, I think about this too, like that's 900 building permits that have to get issued by the city, who takes, like, when I did a building permit for the house I was building, I think it took like 6 to 8 months. Now times that by 900 new ones coming in, right?
You would hope that they expedite given the situation, but I get your point.
I would say, you hear the horror stories out of California. We're not California. And I would say our city and county are pretty good about being reasonable about that stuff, but you'd hope that they would. The other interesting thing is like we have all these new energy codes that are going to fundamentally change how you can build houses. The energy codes went in like 2 years after Mike's house was built. So that will affect the permitting, right? How do you can't just do it one for one with insurance, because now you're required to do certain insulation and certain interior things that you have to do for
even where like proximity of outlets to water, like stuff like that, right? Like, yeah.
Sure, there's a lot of stuff. Yeah, exactly. And maybe those are things the city is willing to say, you know what, we're going to forego that because this is a state of emergency, which would expedite being able to do permits. So you'd hope so. I think our folks are decently reasonable in that sense.
Yeah.
But
talking to our public adjuster, he actually said Washington is really good with stuff like that. He's done stuff over in the Seattle side pretty frequently. And he said that like for when it comes to like consumer rights and sort of disaster recovery, Washington's one of the best states for it, which is really nice. So people rip on the blue state, but the thing is, blue states, they do give money back into the people. It's not always just to the people that everyone hates. Sometimes you do
exactly.
money.
Yeah, there's definitely lots of good benefits about it, especially when you're in need. One thing I want to say on the insurance thing. So I have several friends that lost their homes, and then one of them was telling me, total losses, right? Just completely to the ground. So you mentioned actual cash value and replacement costs, Dylan.
Yep.
Ideally, you don't have actual cash value, because what that means is they're going to take the depreciated value. So a lot of times, like, we'll even separate your policy anyways, like your roof. Like if your roof like blows off your house and you need a new one, say it's a 30-year roof and it's 15 years old, they're only going to give you at best 50% of what that roof is worth to what it costs to replace this.
Which is a crock of shit, but it's a
crock of shit. Yep. And roofs are notoriously that way, even if you have a replacement cost policy. But yeah, actual cash value is a depreciated value. So they're going to say, well, your carpet was 10 years old, so it's actually worth this. And they have all these calculations that they use and there's nothing you can do about it. That's where like having an insurance adjuster, a private insurance adjuster would help. The thing is, so replacement cost though, your house totally burns down. and you have a replacement cost policy, it's like, well, we're just going to rebuild it as it was when you set up your policy. So when you set up your policy, did you tell them you had tile floors or LVP? Did you tell them you had quartz countertops, or did you just check the box to make it cheap, to make because you could check the box and make your insurance cheap monthly, but those are the materials they're going to approve for you to do. So if you said 40% of your house was tile, then whatever 40% of tile costs is what you're going to get. But if you just said it's all carpet, you're not going to get that full replacement.
Mike, didn't you have gold toilets?
He did. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Everything in the house
100%.
was gold, actually.
It was gold plated.
The golden ballroom's actually modeled after my house. I was the inspiration.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
nice, dude.
That
So, but think about this for a second, because everybody laughs and jokes like, well, insurance will pay for it. It's like, sometimes. And so think about this. So this is what one of my friends was told. Okay, it's a total loss. We're going to tell you what your policy replacement cost is, say, $400,000 for this. The first person to get paid is your mortgage company, right? So you got to pay off your mortgage, and then whatever's left over is what you can now build your house for, and you'll need to get a construction loan to do that. So what if you don't qualify for a construction loan anymore? Like, that would suck. Or here's the weird thing that could bite you. What if you took a second out on your home, or you had your HELOC maxed out? Like, you still got to pay off the lenders on all the liens, right? And so
you could literally pay them off and have no house.
You could be upside down and have no house. So like, that's the wrinkle I was going to say, is like, it could be very problematic for you. And I'm sure there are some people that are going to be in that situation where they were actually upside down in the house. Maybe they just bought their house. Who knows? You know what I mean? And they did a 5% down loan, and like, they're definitely upside down. And so it's like, there's all these things where you have insurance and you're like, gosh dang, like, you don't think about it because you don't think about your house being a total loss when you're setting up insurance. You just assume, well, they'll just pay for it. It's like, yes, but there's these little nuances that can bite you.
Could you go to your insurance adjuster and let's say your house is worth $400,000, but ask for a $500,000 policy?
In some cases, yes. I don't know that you can do that on a replacement cost, but you got to also remember, like, it's also less your land value. So your rebuild cost,
right? Yeah.
If you have like an actual cost value, you actually might have more to play with than you think, because you could take out the land value and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, those are all nuances like Mike and I deal with all the time when we're reviewing insurance docs for our borrowers so their insurance company will fight us and be like, well, we can't give you that much insurance. Like, okay, well, you're insuring less than our loan amount. You know what I mean? And so then we have to take
sorry, not going to fly.
Yeah, exactly. We have to take a nuanced approach. It's like, okay, so what if we took out the land value? Well, what is the land value? Okay, so say we're lending on a $200,000 loan, maybe 50 of it's land, and they can insure up to 150. Is that 150 enough to rebuild this house and keep essentially our lien made whole? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there's, that's stuff that you don't really think about. At least I never did. When I'm getting my insurance, I'm like, how do I get the best, lowest cost insurance? Because I'm not thinking that it's not going to pay for what I need.
Yeah, outside of a huge deductible or any of that other stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then all the interior stuff, like Mike's talking about, all the stuff of his, that's a total loss that's in the house. Like, you're not even going to know about all that stuff until like years later when you're trying to find, like I told Mike, I was like, you probably don't even own a thumb drive anymore, dude. Like, you don't own anything. You know what I mean?
Little stuff. And that's honestly where working with like the public adjuster is going to be super clutch. As he said to me, he's like, so the downside of working with him is that before I'm 100% made whole for all of my internal stuff, he's like, it'll probably be 2 to 3 years. Because he's like, essentially what'll happen is they're going to fight them on every single thing.
Mm.
And he's like, so after they said there'll be an initial chunk of change that you get basically to rebuild the house, which is great. They said, but then after that, for years into the future, you're going to be getting like, oh, here's like a $6,000 check. Here's a $10,000 check. Here's whatever to basically replace a lot of the items that the insurance company doesn't want to replace. But I don't have to do that. He does that for me.
He does that, which is nice.
So like, as a business owner, let's say he gets me $1 million, which won't happen, but something crazy, $1 million. He's going to make $100,000. I am so happy to pay him $100,000 to save me 3 years of headache dealing with that.
Oh yeah.
Because my opportunity cost as a business owner is so much more than that.
So much better.
And like, he knows how to do it. Right.
And it's such a headache, dude. Mike and I have had to deal with insurance claims on our rentals. And this is what they're going to do to you, because they've done this to us before, is like, every month they're going to be like, yeah, here's your new offer. And then you're going to be like, no, this is, you're going to have to fight it. And you're going to have to argue with them. And then like 6 weeks later, they might come back to you. And so they're going to slow roll you, right, as an individual. And if you don't have the tool set to like fight them like a private adjuster does, you're the one doing it, and you're at a disadvantage. The other thing like we had to deal with is then we get sued by the contractor that did the mitigation work, because like we want to get paid. I'm like, I've gotten $0 from the insurance company. I have nothing to pay you with, right? But now they are sending us to claims and threatening lawsuits to get paid. I don't have money, right? And the insurance company will just keep slow rolling you and putting you into a bad position financially, where you basically are painted into a corner with no option but to accept whatever they give you.
Yeah.
And that's the strategy.
Not that it's like the same thing, but when I got in my car accident it was literally last September, so almost 12 months ago. And I went to the doctors and all that stuff. And they said, like, they're so delayed in getting you bills anyway, but I'm not paying. Like,
I know.
This is their fault. Like, I'm not paying these. Sorry. And like, still fighting. Like, okay, well, like, scan it, upload it, put in the documents, give it to the insurance people. Like you said, it's more of takes up headspace. I'm just like, I would pay for this to just be over and done.
Yeah. And to that point, because of how delayed it is, very relevant to the listeners of this show, we've been harping a lot about, selling properties, getting liquid, making sure that you're actually in like a good defensive position and not just being fully leveraged all the time. I think about like some of our borrowers and stuff that we get through SLA, how fucked they would be this happened, because they have no money.
They have nothing.
Yeah. And like also too, if they had no money, but let's say they also have rentals that burned, or like they lost their house and now like then something happens to one of their rentals. Like, what do you think about this?
We have actual borrowers who have flips or houses that have burned down this last week, like that are our borrowers that owe us money. Like, so holy shit. Like, you think about that. We're like,
do we actually have a borrower that lost a house?
Tim is one of them. He lost his.
Was that one of ours? That's like one of our loans?
No, I don't think it's one of our loans, but it's a house and then Corey, I think he actively has a loan with us, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Have a loan, but it's on the other side of town.
Sorry, like houses that we're lending on aren't losses, but our borrowers have had taken a loss.
Gotcha.
So you think about when we're looking at some of these borrowers, like you're like, Mike's right, like they're stressed, right? And you don't want to be that guy as a investor.
And just as a general rule of thumb, if you have some wins, especially early, take some chips off the table. Like, yeah. Realize those gains. And there is something to be said about continuously reinvesting and like putting all the chips on the table. But after a certain amount of time, just actually take the profits that you made for yourself and for your family.
Yeah. And like, that's one thing I'm so grateful for is like financially, there's no concern for us at all. I had quite a few people. Let me see too. I really appreciate all the outreach that I've gotten. I've actually had a lot of listeners reach out, a lot of, people just from like my wider circles reach out. And so like, if you guys know people that are affected by something, just reach out to them. It actually does like lift the spirits a lot to know that you're thought of. Like I have people that I haven't talked to in 20 years reach out to me. Honestly, since I was like in high school, reaching out and just hoping that we were okay, which is crazy. So definitely do that. But also I had several people ask me if we had a GoFundMe. I do not need your money. As much as I appreciate that, like we're fine. I've been pushing everybody towards Corey that we mentioned before. I'll put his GoFundMe in the show notes as well. He's a part of our Collecting Keys community. He was a scale community member for us. Super awesome family. Literally lives less than 100 yards from me, and his house is 100% gone. So if you listen to this and you're feeling like you want to be charitable and you're looking for an individual cause, it isn't like a sketchy charity, you can go and send money there as well.
Let me add one thing to that too, because like, and if you do, like, hit up Mike and I both, because like I've had several people reach out like, do you know anybody that had like a loss? And I'm like, yes. Like, do they have a GoFundMe? I'm like, no. And I also have people that like, I don't want to donate to a GoFundMe. I'm like, here's the person's Venmo. Just send them 10 grand, 5 grand, $100, $20, whatever. And so I've done that for several people and business owners locally that wanted to help. And like, which is kind of cool to hear. Like, there's all the things that go on in a disaster with all the people trying to take advantage, but there's a lot of good people out there that quietly just want to help somebody, which is really cool to see.
It's sad that it takes an event like this, but it does seem like it also brings the community closer together when events like this happen.
Totally.
Yeah.
Mike, anything you would have done differently, like knowing this has happened now, or like, should I have all of our essentials in a safe somewhere? Like, I don't know, any like tidbits?
Yeah.
Non-replaceable things.
Yeah, for sure. So, we are human beings. So we are like everybody else, right? Like we had a fire safe for like passports, important documents, all sort of things. Of course, half the stuff wasn't in there.
Yeah.
So all that stuff's gone. A lot of it was in my wife's office because like literally that week we had been finalizing our flights to Europe and stuff that we were planning for the next couple of weeks, which we're no longer doing. So all that stuff's completely gone. I would say like take the extra 35 seconds and just put your documents in the fire safe when you're done with them, right?
Yes.
It takes no time at all, but now it's a giant hassle dealing with that. Outside of that, I would say like things that you might think that you're prepared. And Dan and I have talked a decent amount about this. No matter in your head how prepared you think you are, when it actually hits the fan, I promise you that you're not.
You're not at all.
You can't predict the circumstances. You can't predict how people are going to act. Even if you think you're prepared,
now you weren't home. Did you have a go bag or like a emergency bag that because we don't, I'd be honest. No.
No, we didn't.
That's the crazy thing too about it is like, to your point, Mike, like being prepared, like you can have all these like systems in your house, but if you're not there, like I was taking a quick, not a full day, just a casual day at the lake. I was flip-flops, shorts, t-shirt, and a cooler full of alcohol. And I was going to chill out for just a few hours that day. And I couldn't even get back to my house. How helpless are you with flip-flops on?
Yeah, that's the same as us. We were going to have a pool day with our friends after grabbing brunch. Like I said, like they always say that the worst days, they'll start like every other day. You will have plans. You will not know that the worst thing is coming. And that was 100% what happened. And I would say that I'm so grateful that like we are friends with our neighbors. So our dog was able to get saved because if we lost our dog too, it would have been fucking devastating, man. But like done differently at this point, like it's so hard to say because there's so many woulda, coulda, shouldas. But realistically, that we wouldn't have done them anyway, unless you were like neurotic about
it.
stuff.
Right. Yeah.
The one thing that I would say for everybody on that note, because I did this when the second time I got evacuated, was just film everything in your house once a year.
Yes.
Just everything. Just go through with your camera and film it. Because like Mike talks about the passports and stuff, that's replaceable at least. If there's like irreplaceable shit like that you don't look at every day, probably put it in a safe or a safety deposit box would be better. But like, just video everything because then you don't have to worry about that when you leave. You can just get out of your house and leave, or you're not there. You don't stress out.
What's so crazy is we talked about that for a while and I'd never done it. And then for some reason, like a month ago, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this right now. And I literally went around our entire house and I filmed everything. Don't know why. I just had like this like sudden urge to do it. And I felt it, dude.
How do you think an insurance, not in your case, Mike, how do you like, let's say you have your grandma's ashes in an urn on the mantle. Like there's no like monetary value that someone could put on that. That's just like one of those things though. Like,
yeah, it's sentimental. You're not getting that back. I mean,
no.
Like honestly, the stuff that I was primarily concerned about when we got up there to finish up was I was concerned about our firearms, not because like I want to save my guns, but because I don't want someone to break into our house and then now have like an AR-15 that they can go and do some bad shit with. Right. So I was heavily concerned about that. We have a lot of stuff for our son, like handwritten notes from family members and those sort of things that I wanted to save. And then for me personally, we have a ton of handmade art, like real art from our world travels. And I really wanted to save a lot of that stuff because we'll never be able to replace that.
Yeah, it's irreplaceable.
No, those are things that we wouldn't necessarily keep in like a safe because we want them displayed, right? But like we did go up and retrieve those things just because I wanted to make sure that like if this fire does escalate, which it might still do this coming weekend, that at least it's in like a somewhat better spot now.
Yeah. Well, I liked your posts, and we can probably end with this, was what actually matters in this world, in this life, right? It was like your wife, your kid, and your friends, and like your health. Like that was pretty much the gist. And I know that's a cliche thing, but living through it is probably a different experience.
Dude, yeah, 100%. And I've spent the last many years of my life focused on business, focused on staying in shape, doing like, bucket list trips, doing whatever. And literally over the course of a 3-hour span, none of those things really seem like that big of a deal anymore, And, as we're going through all this, I'm super grateful that my son's only 10 months. And so we've kind of been joking about it is he's not going to remember it because like we literally came home from like our completely destroyed house and I walk into our friend's house, we were saying, and he's just like giggling, having like the best time. He
yeah, you're like, your house is gone, bud.
And like we've been joking of like he's probably going to be like at age of like 3 or 4, and he's kind of starting to ask questions stuff. He's going to want to know the story about the fire, right? Because that's how kids are. They want to hear about the fire when they were a baby.
They might write a I Survived book about. I don't know if you guys are familiar with those. With your kids aren't old enough, but I Survived the Spokane fire.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and then one last little thing I just wanted to share, which I thought was a really cool piece of humanity. So I don't know if I said this already. So firefighters that saved our house as they were going by, they left us a note on the front door basically saying like, hey, like we saw the smoke from your house and we're sorry about the damage. We were able to save the structure. It's from the Kootenai County Fire Department. We saved that note. We're going to basically frame it when the house is recovered and put it in the entryway.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
That's Bob. I love that.
Yeah, little stuff like that. You know, it's like, it gives you a little bit of humanity in all this stuff, you know, and we're at the acceptance phase. It is what it is at this point. You know, it's a horrible tragedy, but I'm at the point now where I'm grateful that we do still have something. And honestly, a lot of my energy is I just want to help other people that are significantly worse off, because at the end of the day, financially we're fine. Business, this is also a great hedge for you guys. Set up a virtual business, because if like our entire company was in Spokane, that would have been a freaking mess.
Dude.
But because we have team members all over, we have overseas people, like literally nothing skipped a beat with the company. It just still is rolling.
They're just key. They're plugging away, which is also like another milestone. I think that Mike and I need to high five each other at one of these points, because him and I were out of pocket. Mike especially, like they just did their stuff and we kept making money.
Well, not only that, they stepped up, right? Like, you know, we saw people like step into like leadership roles and things to basically keep stuff going, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
You know, so we have no concerns there. We have family support. We have friend support, you know, and so we experienced tragedy, which I have grieved about, but I'm, you know, now mostly just trying to help other people that aren't as fortunate as us at this point. So if you guys want to contribute to that, like I said, I'll put Corey's GoFundMe in our show notes. I'll put it in my Instagram, a little signature description, whatever they call it, on my profile as well at Mike_invest. I'll share it with you guys too if you guys want to do that. But if you're feeling charitable and want to give some money, give it to him. Great dude, member of our wider community as part of the podcast, and literally lives down the street from me. And I would say do that over giving it to some like random organization, because there's a lot of scam artists out there that are doing sketchy stuff.
Oh yeah, dude.
So then you'll at least know that it's going to someone directly. Yeah, outside of that, I don't know. We're just going to be going 1 week at a time right now. And I'll kind of keep everyone in the loop too, just for learning purposes as I go through things with insurance and all that. So you guys can learn from my experience being in a natural disaster for if and when it happens to you guys.
Hey, fire can't even keep Mike away from the podcast.
Yeah, totally. So, well, thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll talk to you guys next time.